Hi, everyone. This is Catching Up with the Nerds with your hosts, Tom and JC. This is a podcast about two dads that are catching up on all the nerdy stuff we missed, sharing how we pass on our nerdy passions to our kids, and deep dive into nerdy pop culture to make it more accessible for you, our listener. I'm one half of your podcast host. This is Juan Carlos Garay, but everybody calls me JC. I am currently in Portland, but am originally from Honduras. Before living in Portland, I was living in London where I met Tom. And before that, in the States. And before that, I was originally from Honduras, as mentioned. And I've got two lovely kids, an 11-year-old named Aiden, a 5-year-old named Arabelle, and I'm married to an amazing woman called Fiorella. We all call her Fio. And I am very much into graphic novels. That's kind of been my bag. And I love video games and movies and series and all things nerdy. And love to talk about it with Tom.
Excellent. I am Tom Arnal. I'm the other half of the podcast. Originally from France, as you can hear, the thick accent coming through the microphone. Moved to the UK about 20 years ago, which is where we met. Not that long ago, about 10 years ago, I think, something like that. What else? I've got two lovely kids also. Emily, 11, who's the same age as Aiden. Make the connection there. And Louis, who's almost 4. I'm married to Elizabeth, who is also named Liz. I like the Queen. What else do I have? Who is also lovely, as she'll be listening to this. I'm very much into video games, retro gaming, all new, whatever. I play everything. I love comics, movies, the Marvel Universe, Batman, that's me, and a little bit of anime. All right, so last episode we talked about the PlayStation list of recommendations we would get to ourselves and our kids, and hopefully your kids, if you're listening. So we're moving on today to the Microsoft Xbox list of recommendation.
Yeah.
Should I start?
Yeah, go for it, man. So with this one, full disclaimer, I never owned an Xbox. So this is games that I've played that are cross-platform that also would apply for Xbox. So yeah, we'd definitely love to hear your thoughts on what your picks are.
All right. Good disclaimer. I don't think, it's fine though. There's a bunch of, like you say, cross-platform. So we'll stick them into that category and pretend we played Xbox. Anyway, for Xbox owners out there, I'll go first then. I'm starting with the Lego Harry Potter version, which I believe, if I go back into my notes, was released about, 2016? Am I talking rubbish? Maybe a bit earlier than that. Maybe I should have got that somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter when it was released. We don't care about that. So it is what it is. It's literally the part of the Lego world of video games, where it's those beautiful graphics we've seen on every single Lego games that's been released. So it's following the storyline of the Harry Potter films. So the way the game is set up, and the version I own, is I think year 1 all the way to year 6. How many Harry Potter films are there? Yeah, there's 7 actually. Like the 7 years at school, primary school.
But did they break up the last one into 2?
Yeah, I think they break the last. Yeah, they do break up the last one into 2, but I think the last one is like year 6, and then it goes into year 7. Which, by the way, they're not. They're not actually taking. They're just trying to stay alive in the last one.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And hang on, I'm just thinking. Yeah, 2016. I wasn't wrong. That's when it came out. So every single game is following the pattern of the books and the movies, and you start as a young Harry Potter, and then you finish the game as the older, young adult Harry Potter. I think it's nothing that's too different from the rest of the Lego games out there.
Yeah, that was my question. It's like, why would you pick this one over the other Lego games? Because they've got the Avengers game, they've got the Jurassic Park game, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a bunch of, and all of them, by the way, I think highly recommendable for the kids. So like, they're super like fun-loving games that if the kids are into any of those properties, it's very easy to dive in because it feels like you're playing the movie pretty much, right?
So
But
that's
why
exactly
this one or the other one? Yeah.
that's exactly that. It's because you're playing the movie, and my daughter Emily is a huge Harry Potter fan. You know, she everything she does is Harry Potter related. Most of the discussions and chats that she has with her friends are Harry Potter related. I mean, the one she's talking, sharing with us, those discussions she's sharing with us are Harry Potter related. So she's well into that. So it is a perfect game for me to get her into playing a little bit more,
Yeah.
and play something else than Minecraft.
Yeah.
And also, it was back in the days where I picked up my first Xbox 360, and one of the games I got on the part of the package was Lego Harry Potter. So I was like, you know what, it's perfect. So I wanted her to get used to different consoles and different controllers. So I got her to play that version on the Xbox, and that's it. That's all it is really. It's just out of convenience, and I guess, and I know that would get her hooked up to the story. You know, this she already knows. She's read the books. She's seen the movies multiple times. So for her, it's not something that she'll have to, if she doesn't really pay attention to the story, as kids do a lot, they just get into their own world and forget about the storyline from time to time.
Yeah.
She would know what's still is going on, and it's a very kids friendly movie, game, sorry, not movie, where you just go around and complete a bunch of tasks, and you just break up. You can smash the entire I was going to say set the entire the entire level if you want to collect a bunch of Lego bricks.
Yep.
So it's quite cute, and there's no violence in it. Everything is extremely cute. So there's no there's no bad surprise in those games. But the fact that this sticking to the story, because that's something that sometimes I find it's not annoying, but it can be a bit much, is when a video game that is based off a movie or a series of books, sometimes they deviate into something completely different, which is great. It's being creative is awesome. But sometimes I want to play a story that I've read, or a movie that I've watched, and that's literally what it is. So sometimes if you get stuck in a room and you don't know what to do, you just have to remember what the film or what Harry Potter did in the movie, and you're like, oh, actually he did this to that character. So if you go and talk to that guy, that'll unlock the next level or the next chapter or whatever.
All right.
I think that's it. Yeah. So greatly recommended. It's they're not actually as short as I thought they would be in terms of duration, game duration. So they won't be finished in 5 minutes. But they're great fun for the kids. I think if you can find one Lego series that matches your kids' interests in a movie, or actually many movies, right? Because there's Star Wars, Lego Star Wars, and
oh yeah, they got a bunch of them.
Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So
yeah.
Marvel, of course. So depending on what your kid is into, I could have said, Lego Marvel superheroes. That would have been the same. Like it's an easy game, but you could as well pick that up. It's the same. Literally, they just reskin the whole game, to fit. Put a bunch of characters. There's nothing new or added into gameplay and stuff like that. But yeah, first recommendation.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we're saying is like, while gameplay across the games tends to somewhat be repetitive in some situations, what was cool is like it's a more natural way of having the kids move away from Fortnite into properties they're familiar with, right? Because if they're Marvel fans, if they're DC fans, if they're Harry Potter fans, whatever it may be, Lord of the Rings is like there's one for everyone that at least allows them to take on a longer form adventure rather than just the constant repetition. So that's cool, dude. Love the recommendation. All right. So for my recommendation, I'm going to kick off with Portal 2, which is not necessarily associated directly with Xbox. You can find it cross platforms. And I think actually it might even been originally a PC game. But if you've played Portal at all, Portal 2 is just basically a continuation of it. And you can go into either one. Portal 2, I think, is kind of the slight better one. But it is a game where it feels like a first person shooter. But when you're shooting, you're not actually shooting anyone. You're actually shooting portals. And what you do is like you shoot a portal into a wall, and you can walk through that portal, and it basically drops you in another section of the room. So you have to create a portal to go into it and a portal that's coming out. And it's basically a puzzle game because you have to try to maneuver the the task that needs to be done in the room by basically putting portals in different areas to walk through. But it gets super complicated really quickly, where like there'll be like things falling from the ceiling, like a drip of lava or something, and you've got to create a portal under it so lava then like flows into this other container that gets heated up, that then
Mm.
like sparks this other machine that opens a door, and then you have to like find a portal to get to that door. So it's this really long, complicated like process each time, but it forces you to think a few steps ahead. That's one of the things that I absolutely loved about it. It was actually one of the games when Aiden was very into Bed Wars and Minecraft. They started playing, and without me pushing him to do it, he just naturally gravitated to it because he loves any game that's like a problem solving game. And this was awesome because also like some of the puzzles are genuinely hard,
Mm.
and you can find a lot of YouTube tutorials around like how to beat them and stuff. It's a type of game that you can probably beat. I think it's probably like a 4 to 5 hour one, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like super long. But a lot of people actually like compete, like they play it competitively to see how fast you can beat the game, because there's people that beat it in like 45 minutes and stuff. And when I hear that and you see the complexity of the game, it just blows your mind. They're able to remember all those patterns that quickly. So it's
Yeah,
almost like
that's
a
what it
Rubik's
is.
Cube. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you just got to remember patterns in it and then to be able to jump through them. And yeah, it's super fun, recommended. Not violent, but at the same time, very engaging. If your kid's a problem solver, this is totally a game for them.
Is it a two players game? I
You
don't
can
think
play
it
two.
is. Oh, you can play.
You have like a companion that can play with you, and you can take on the puzzles together. That's only in Portal 2 though, not Portal 1.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I actually bought it for the PlayStation 3. It's not
Oh, cool.
PlayStation 2. I think I bought it somewhere. Oh no, for the 360. I think I got the Portal 1, but I've never actually tried it. So I
Yeah,
might jump on that fairly
yeah,
soon.
it's a fun one, man. So yeah, that's my recommendation for Xbox. Go check it out.
All right, cool. And next one for me, it's a very beautiful game called Ori and the Blind Forest, which is a 2D platformer, and well,
Oh,
it's a
wow.
puzzle platform game. And if you've not seen anything, or if you're not into platformer puzzle games, go on. I would suggest you go on YouTube and watch some of the gameplay. It's nothing out of the ordinary in terms of platformer, but like the graphics are absolutely
Yeah.
breathtaking. So you play obviously you play the character named Ori, and you go through a beautiful forest trying to, I think you're trying to save the forest, something like that. It's a lot of writing and a lot of talking in that game, and I gave up listening after a little bit. But the graphics is where it's at. It's made by Microsoft. I think at the
Oh,
when it came out, I believe back in 20, again, I need my dates, 2015, on Windows and the Xbox One. Obviously being developed and distributed by Xbox. It was an Xbox exclusive at the time, but it came out on Switch. So that's why I was going to put that one on my Switch list, but then I decided to go for the Xbox version instead. It came out on the Switch in 2019, so is when I picked it up again.
yep.
But it's on the Xbox and it looks absolutely amazing. It's very chilled. It's very chilled out.
Yeah.
In terms of vibe, it's very eco-friendly. I think is the word.
Yeah.
You do go through a bunch of enemies, but again, the attacks there's nothing violent with it. The spirit of the game is it's a platformer, right? You jump on enemies. You've got this little dash attack where you just literally throw, you just throw laser beams at enemies and
Yeah.
stuff like or thunder, whatever it is. It's very well done. I think this one for me, apart from the story, the visuals is where
Yeah.
this one stand apart from the rest. The music is also very great. So it's one of those games that is it's more of an experience thing. It's like you have to play it. I don't think it's a two players game though, so I don't know if you can really share that with
Yep.
sit down and play with your kids. But it's one that you would not make them aggressive in any way, shape, or form. They'd be so relaxed at the end of it, even though again you go through a bunch of enemies. But that's beside the point.
Well, but and also for everybody out there that isn't familiar with the term platformer, think about games like Super Mario Brothers and how it
Yeah,
was like scrolling sideways across the screen, and you're trying to complete a level, and then it would start again the next level. That's basically anytime we talk about platforms, that's what we're talking about. And for me, this is a really interesting conversation because the format of platformers hasn't necessarily changed in the years. They just make them
no,
harder and harder. But I think the to your point, like the visuals around them, right? So we talk about this game. One is like, dude, all your recommendations have just been like amazing to look at.
mm,
They've been such beautiful games. But then you look at what they're doing in terms of the visuals for those games. So you take this game. You were talking earlier about Cuphead, right? Which is
oh
an
yeah,
incredibly difficult platformer. Especially kids that are into like a big challenge. That's like a great one. But the visuals are just stunning,
yeah,
right? And then when I saw this game, it made me think of Hollow Knight.
oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I feel like there's some shared DNA there where it's like just like the use of light within the game and how like things illuminate and just like what the setting looks like is very fantastical and stuff. It is one of those that you wanted, to your point, play for the experience
Mm.
of just like taking in all those amazing visuals and graphics and then making your way through the game, right? Because they're still super fun to play.
I mean, that one's but that game's won a bunch of awards as well. I was looking at that. So you know you can't go wrong with this one. It's I think it's also going very cheap right now. So if you're looking for a good game of for your Christmas shopping, that'll be a
Yeah.
good one to pick up. I think at the moment.
Totally, totally. Sounds awesome. Cool, dude. Thanks for the accommodation. For my next pick, I will stay in the platformer world for a little bit. And my recommendation is Rayman Legends.
Mm.
So this is a game that same Ada and I picked up a couple years ago, started playing, and it was one of the games that I noticed that whenever he has friends over, there's always like that moment of just like, are they into the same games? And then you realize that some of the kids are into completely different games than he is. And then it's always like, oh, there's nothing we want to play because it's like he's into this or she's into that and
Yeah.
I'm into this. And Rayman Legends was one of those games that he was instantly able to pick up and play with anyone because
Mm.
it's just very easy to get into the game. So Rayman, Rayman, and it's super easy to play. But the cool part is that the two-player mode is so fun because what happens is like as you're progressing, and it's once again we're back to kind of the platformer world, so it's like side-scrolling game. As you progress through the various challenges within that particular level, if your partner gets left behind, they just like pop into this bubble and
Yeah.
follow you, and you've got to pop them out of the bubble to like drop in and play again. So if there's like a particularly difficult part, I would just let myself die, and then like I would be the bubble, and like Aiden would get me through that section, and then just pop me, and then we keep playing. Or else it's like Dad was like holding him back for too long.
Sure. And then you take all the credit.
Totally. And again,
Once
so the
you
game was like, "See, told you we could do it."
carried you.
Totally.
It's funny because it's funny you mentioned Rayman because I actually used that game because he came out not Rayman Legends, but I think Rayman. Can't remember the actual full name of the game, but Rayman that came out on the Sega Saturn. So Sega Saturn, for
Oh,
everyone that's not familiar with with that
deep
console,
pull. Very
yeah, I know.
nice.
Um, that's a console that came out around 95, 96, and that was
Oh
a
yeah.
direct threat to the PlayStation One.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But not really.
unfortunately, yeah, it didn't pan out that way, but
Uh,
it came out just before the PS1.
on that note, though, check out our episode on the launch of PlayStation 1. You might hear more about it.
Indeed.
See that
You'll
plug?
love it
See
because
what I
it's
did there? See what I did there?
beautiful plug. We're learning. We're learning. Um, and so I used that game to introduce the Saturn to Emily. So I thought it was a good platformer
Oh.
to do that. It looks beautiful, even though the game is what 95. When was that? That's 25 years ago. God.
Yeah.
Um, so the game is 25 years old itself. So and it still holds up to this day graphically because it's hand drawn
Yeah.
graphics.
Oh,
Which was
really?
to the well hand drawn. Yeah, it's the art style is the sort of hand
Yeah.
drawn graphics.
Yeah.
And it's 2D, and that's what the Sega Saturn was really good for. It's colorful 2D games. So again, if you it's a segue, if you want to get into retro gaming and get yourself a Sega Saturn, it's better than the PlayStation One. Anyway,
Oh, okay.
going back.
There you
It flopped everywhere in the world, around the world except for Japan. So yeah,
go. Well, and I think it's one of those. It's like it became popular
After.
in the retro world, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those. It's like now it's like it's kind of like the vinyl of that time, where it's like, oh, let's go back and play that because there's some depth to it that I'd never appreciated in those days, and now I do,
It's the
right?
cool kid. It's the cool kid of the retro world.
There you
We'll
go.
talk about it one day. I'm sure we'll get on to that topic at some point.
Fair enough.
So my final recommendation for the day, I'm gonna go with Batman Arkham Asylum. I can't say those
Nice.
words.
Love that game.
Yeah, it's a great game. Came out in 2009, and it's a action adventure game, which is seen from the third person perspective. So you're
Yep.
seeing Batman from behind. That's really cool. It's a sexy thing.
Yep.
This one is slightly more violent, so that would be more for
Oh, yeah.
an older, yeah, slightly, understatement of the year. But it's made for a more mature audience. But I guess teenage kids can play that. Would you say, let's say 14, 15-year-olds? That's actually fine, depending again on your sensibilities.
Because if we're comparing it to like Red Dead Redemption and like Last of Us, I feel like this is more tame. What's your take?
Than Last of, oh yeah, absolutely, than Last of Us. And it's, I think it's playing it. I don't remember seeing anything that you wouldn't expect from a Batman game.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with the sort of dark vibe that it's got. It's based in an asylum, so what do you expect?
So would you give this, if this were a movie, would you give it an R rating or a PG-13? I think it's a good way of like explaining it to people. Because like God of War would be an R, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then is this like, how does this compare to like violence that kids would see no matter what in like Birds of Prey or like in a Marvel movie? Is it like that type of PG-13 violence?
Yeah, it's slightly darker than a Marvel movie, I'd say, because of the setting of the games, right? Because of where it's taking place in a mental hospital, mental institute. So that's already strike one right there.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's gory violence. I'd say it's I don't know if strong violence works. I don't remember seeing any blood or like body parts exploding everywhere and
yeah,
guts.
exactly.
I think it's more like the sort of Batman violence you would come to expect from a game. You'll drop from the ceiling and just knock everyone out. I think that's the sort of violence you get. It's I would rate it the same that you would rate a Batman film. More of the Christopher Nolan
correct
series, right?
That's how I see it too. Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's anything. If your kid's been playing Call of Duty, they'll be more than able to handle.
Yeah. Batman for sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. Because that's one of the things that to me is kind of interesting about this particular franchise is that everything got like a lot darker as far as the game, and like the world building around it I think is cool, and I think that it makes it relatable to like the Fortnite players in that it is a third person perspective, right? In terms of, it's not a side platform, it's a third person perspective that's similar to Fortnite. While the violence like Fortnite is not like overly gratuitous, there is a lot of like shoot 'em up, right? It's like you got to catch the bad guys, and there's like, and as usual, like Batman does his thing. He's got all the tools and stuff like that and all the weapons. So it gives them like that range of like, oh, go find the next weapon, go like discover this next part of the world. But you take out the map is shrinking part, right? So it makes it a longer, more engaging game.
It's and definitely there's a lot more thinking involved, because even though it's as we said, it's an action adventure game, there's a lot of platforming elements to it also, that you've got to jump from A to B to get access to that tiny window over there so you can get into the base or whatever. So there's a lot of thinking and trying to understand and connect the dots and trying to understand where you have to go next and what lever you have to pull and all stuff. So it's there's a bit of thinking behind it. It's not just pure brawler, going in there God of War style and destroy everything. There's a bit of finesse, I think is the word you want to use. See that?
And totally, and the gameplay, I feel like this is the game that kind of like helped set up Spider-Man, right? It's like this is a game that crawled so that Spider-Man could run, in terms of like just discovering Gotham was like super fun, but not nearly as I think open and like cool as really like Spider-Man does it. So it's another one that I feel like it's one of those games that like meant something when it came out, and so it's a cool one to like talk to the kids about and stuff. They can see the through line between like this and other games that they've played and how they kind of like changed the game
Yeah,
really.
yeah. I guess there's a connection to, like you said, the Spider-Man. I'm just trying. Have you played the other Batman game that came out after that? I can't remember the actual. It's on
No, but I've
PlayStation
wanted
4.
to. Yeah, there's been a couple actually. They look
Mm.
all very good. So yeah, no, I have not had enough time to get to those.
It's real
But once
cheap right
again,
now. You can pick it up.
all I would think recommendable. I don't think any of them are like a hard R sort of game. I
No,
think they'll be
no,
like
no.
in the very much in the PG-13. Because at the end of the day, it's like remember like Batman doesn't really kill people at the end of the day, right?
That's his
That's
philosophy.
that's his brand. So
Hmm.
it's there you go, strong recommendation. Moving on to the next one, I will keep mine very similar and kind of to the point. Um, I'm recommending the Marvel's Avengers game.
Yes.
While there are like in terms of gameplay, there's been quite a few Marvel's Avengers game, so you can definitely kind of look through kind of the various ones that have been launched. There's a more recent one that came out that stars Kamala Khan. There's definitely been some elements of the gameplay of that particular one that have been
Mm.
debated, especially in the gamer world. And there's definitely some things that are lacking there. But coming back to the premise of this miniseries is about how to try to get your kids off of Fortnite. If they're Marvel kids, they've watched all the movies. This is like the perfect way because it's like it just feels like you're playing in a movie. You get to play with your favorite characters. They've got all the abilities, and while they don't look exactly similar, they're like close enough. And then you get to play with some new characters. You get introduced to new Marvel characters that aren't in the movies. So there's just a ton to discover in terms of from a kind of a nerdy fan perspective. In terms of kind of the actual gaming, I think there's definitely some stuff that's missing there for sure. But depending on the level of gaming that your kid does, like it should be fine. Like for the average gamer, it should absolutely be fine. You'll have a ton of fun playing it.
Yeah, it's funny because that one I actually pre-ordered. If you're talking about the Marvel Avengers that came out very recently on
Yeah.
all of them, right? The
Yes.
actually I had it pre-ordered on Amazon back in. I think they announced it back in, I think March, early 2020. They announced the game, and I
They've
went,
been talking about
yes.
it for a while.
Well,
Yeah.
they were talking about it for a while, but I think
Yeah.
the actual trailer and everything dropped back earlier this year.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I tried a demo, and it's like you said, there's something that is lacking in it. I couldn't quite say what it was, put a finger on it, but it's and I actually canceled my pre-order for the game, and I think there were a lot of um, press release that came out the last couple of weeks. From who made the game? I can't remember. I think it's from Square Enix, who's the creator of Final Fantasy series. And they came out saying, obviously our sales expectations were not matched for this game. Where they not recouped the money they've invested into producing the game,
All
which is a
right.
bit sad. Which is actually quite rare these days for big AAA video games, like big
Yeah.
production video games. Which leads me to my next point, which is why right now for Black Friday, if you're listening to this on Black Friday or Cyber Monday or whatever it is these days,
Yep.
it's going for very cheap. It
Oh,
is
cool.
actually now on sale more than half price. So right now, if you're in the UK, for example, you can pick it up for £25. I will expect it will be the same on if you
Yeah.
check on Amazon in the US, they'll probably be around the same price. But saying that, I came from playing Spider-Man and getting my kids to play Spider-Man also.
Yeah.
So we made the jump from Spider-Man, which is a beautiful, extremely well produced game with a great storyline behind it, to the Marvel Avengers game. There's a bit of a gap there. But if you buy that for your kids and they're huge Marvel fans, like just go right ahead. They'll enjoy it. But I think if you got to play Spider-Man first,
Yes.
think, and if it's for yourself, if you're listening to this and it's for yourself, maybe think about it twice. Try the demo, download the demo. There's demo available on the Xbox Store and PlayStation Store, so that by all means do that. If it's for your kids for 20 something pounds, just go right ahead. It's dirt cheap for that, for what you'll get.
And I think what they're saying is don't get Spider-Man and Marvel. It's like because one is
not
clearly
yeah.
superior. But if you
One
want
is,
like
yeah.
not to spend the big bucks, then just like get the Marvel game, get them into it. They want a breadth of characters. Your kids want to play all the different characters. Or in the case of like, hey man, like one of the lead characters is Kamala Khan, right? It's like
Yeah,
if you're a family that, whether it be Muslim or like not Caucasian, this is a great opportunity for your kid to actually see someone that looks like them on video games and be able to play, right? And sometimes that I think we've talked about in episodes before, sometimes that representation matters more than the actual success of the
quality.
game.
Yeah,
It's like we got one in there, and hopefully once again this game can crawl so that others can run, right? And hopefully better titles will
exactly.
come with diverse characters coming up. So
I've
definitely
seen I've
check it out.
seen I've seen that with the way people reacted to Miles Morales being a game and being released and being an extremely good game. So if you go on Twitter, especially, you see a lot of people that have used the um, Miles Morales hashtag to say how proud they were about their origins and how they can relate to Morales and
Yeah.
his backgrounds. And it's like seeing the flag on screen and seeing how, for example, something simple like him speaking Spanish to his mom, and a lot of people could relate to that.
Amazing.
That's just great. There's a bunch of phone calls that he does. It's like half of it is in Spanish and the other half is in English, and I think that's great. It, I keep saying the same, like representation matters, and you said it also. And it's very true. And again, like you said, that was a great point. It's even if the game is average plus, I think Marvel Avengers is not a bad game. It's not what I'm saying, right? It's a great game, but I think it's the expectations around it
Yes, we're
were
huge.
very high.
Yeah.
Like everything that is done with, everything that has the name Marvel attached to it these
Yeah.
days. If you're gonna have something Marvel related, you gotta bring
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you look at stuff like, for example, like Solo, the movie in Star Wars,
Mhm.
it was a movie that had so much hype around it. And
Yeah,
then it was arguably the most disappointing Star Wars movie. But if you pick up and watch that movie just as a movie on its own right, don't consider it in the kind of
that's a
Star
standalone
Wars
movie.
world,
Yeah,
it's a fine movie. Like it's
yeah,
super entertaining. Like I was never bored watching it in any way, but there's some stuff they could that I was like, it's less that I wanted more, just some stuff that actually I think they could have cut out that was kind of
oh
like
yeah,
and they probably given Donald Glover a little more screen time.
yes,
But yeah, it's the same premise, right? It's like sometimes stuff can be appreciated not based on the hype, but just based on what it actually is, right? So cool.
very true. I
But
think we got it all right.
that gets us there, man.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
until next time, check out the next episode where we talk about Nintendo Switch. See you soon,
yes.
guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.